3 seconds. Now she's going to bug me because I said her name. Hello, it's Howard Owens, publisher of the Batavian. We are live again. We're going to be talking to Macy Paradise. You may have heard Macy and some other people were planning what was billed as a protest for next Sunday downtown. With everything going on and some of the violence that's gone with following some of these protests in other cities, Macy met with city officials today, and they've come up with a plan for a barbecue of unity, a barbecue for equality at Williams Park. And so we're going to hear about those plans.
Yes. Hi, Howard.
Hey, Macy, how's it going? Good. So first of all, tell us why you wanted to jump into the fray of this issue.
I'm a born and raised Batavia resident. I have seen being raised. I could never really being raised in Batavia, especially. I could never truly understand the inequality issue. Like, I've always had friends, regardless of skin color. It's never really been an issue for me personally, but also having friends of color, witnessing what they had gone through from a very young age on. I could never truly understand the struggle that they've gone through, but it has kind of enlightened me to kind of what's going on in the world. And I've lived in a couple big cities like LA and Denver, Fort Collins area. And it's one of those things you start to see it, that systemic racism side of things where, and just kind of understanding how much it must hurt, being 6'5", being covered in tattoos. It's a very limited view, but just a view in general of being looked at myself as, maybe some, just based on my looks, I've been judged. And so I felt it really important at the end of the day to stand up for what I believe in. We need peace. The best way to show peace in our case is to bring the community together, bring the police together with the minorities and everybody of Batavia in our community, and show that we all stand together, and that it's much different here than it is in other cities.
So, yeah, I didn't have my volume up. So, Macy, I don't know if how much you watched the video involving George Floyd. If you did watch it or what you've read about that, what's kind of been your personal reaction to that incident?
It was incredibly awful. Obviously, we also heard about the reports are now coming out that the autopsy that was done, that he was killed by asphyxiation. So it's almost kind of the proof is in the pudding that there was an unjust reason. There was absolutely no reason for that to happen. And honestly, that's really sparked all of this tension across the country, which, obviously I do not at all condone the destruction of property or the violent aspect. But in a real sense, it's almost like a boiling pot of water. People have been protesting and have been fighting for equality for hundreds of years. And it's gotten to a point where the pot has been boiling and boiling and boiling, and it finally boiled over. And unfortunately, there's no way to get to prevent water getting on the stove when the water boils over, so to speak. So I can't say that I condone it or agree with the violence that's been going on, but I also have to find a place in my heart to understand it, because we may have been privileged enough as white people to not be pushed to that limit, but if you were scared to go in your community day in and day out because someone was going to judge you, thinking that you're going to steal something in a convenience store, or thinking because of your color that you're doing something wrong in your community, it's just unjust and unfair. And it's one of those things that, like I said, there has to be a point where we all come together and try to fight for equality rather than living with inequality.
So I know we already reported on this. You met with city officials today and came up with a new plan from what you'd originally planned to do. Tell us what the new plans are.
Super excited about that. So we we went in with the mindset of still holding strong on the protest. We kept it very structured to create that peaceful environment. At first, when we met with city officials, they were obviously very against the protest because their fear was it being in front of City Hall and being in such a small location there. It puts people in danger. It wouldn't be able to hold that many people. And then obviously, the reports of some of these people coming from outside the city and terrorizing communities that weren't theirs. That was the biggest concern of all of us. I mean, like I said, I don't condone the violence aspect. And the last thing I want as a lifelong Batavia resident is to see my own community destroyed. So we came up with a backup plan. Our group, the Community of Social Injustice, we came up with a backup plan for the barbecue aspect. We asked the city, even understanding with what's going on with COVID, the only way that we can really push the agenda and keep it going in a positive direction is to move it to a city park, a local park, move it somewhere that is safe and big enough for everybody. And the city even offered to put their hand in the pot, so to speak, and help donate resources, help with food and everything else. And even the chief of police there is going to speak, Sean Halbush or whatever. He's going to speak. We've even reached out to Steve Hawley, in hopes that he'll be there. We really just find it important that we answered some of the residents' concerns about the violent destruction aspect, and the city was actually like very helpful, and they wanted to join in, and it was a very honestly, it was an incredible talk. I mean, I felt like we were super successful. They said that they have specifically pushed to find minority leaders in Batavia to kind of see what rights they want to change and whatever. And they really haven't had many people come forward. So this is definitely going to be one of the first events of this kind that the city of Batavia has sanctioned. Huge success in my eyes. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's a big deal for Batavia.
So you mentioned, well, first of all, I've seen video of, out of Schenectady where the chief of police there marched with the protesters. In Auburn, they got a police escort. There's been other examples around the country of police officers and police leaders kneeling with protesters, contrasted to a lot of other cities where police have, been pushing and shoving and firing on protesters and journalists. So how big of a deal is it to you that Chief Halbush is willing to step up and participate in this and be one of the speakers?
I felt like it was the biggest part of it, if anything. I mean, in reality, to have the police chief not only like help sanction an event like this, but also come to speak at it and share. He shared with us a very sentimental moment this morning in our meeting about how he doesn't condone the actions of those officers. And I told him that, or I expressed to him that the issue mainly in the community is that people are now scared because of other police forces in other cities. The people of the community are now scared that our police, that blue line that we talk about, it was much thicker, and that police kind of back each other. And we found it very important that the police chief was willing to step off of that whole blue line aspect and come out and not condone the actions of that officer, and to speak against it and to say that that would never happen in Batavia. He's a very progressive police chief, and I feel like being here for as long as I have, I've never had the chance to really like meet him or get to know him. And I feel like if the community actually gets to hear him speak and gets to know him as a person, it could really change the whole outlook of the whole community as a whole towards, it really puts us all on the same mission, and it takes alleviates the fear of the Batavia police a little bit, and kind of loosens our community a little bit instead of being so tight like we are currently.
So you're working with a group of people. You started down the path of having quote unquote protest. Now you're switching gears to something more cooperative with city leaders, city officials. What's been the response of the people who you've been working with?
It's been very, very well heard, honestly. Within the last couple of days, as you could understand, with pushing for this protest, even after the Buffalo and Rochester action, all of the destruction there, I've been met with a lot of resistance. I'd say probably 80 to 90% of the response that I've gotten back from that aspect has been negative because obviously people are in fear. Now with the barbecue, with the city coming on board and stuff, it's been an incredible response. Obviously, people are still concerned about the COVID action, like, how we're going to remain safe in that aspect. But I feel like the city was so fearful of the destruction aspect and not having the resources that we decided to use all of the resources we do have for something positive and to kind of like directed in more of a positive manner, and the feedback has been incredible. It went from 80% negative to 80% positive overnight, just by releasing that. So I think it's kind of a huge step for us for sure.
That's great. What do you hope will come out of this barbecue?
I really hope that our community, it really just helps to show that our community is much more united than some of the other communities that we're seeing some of the destruction and chaos in. I know a lot of the protests, people have been coming from outside the community to create that. But still, in a sense, like it's really important to alleviate the fear of Batavia citizens, especially fear of police, because at the end of the day, we need a police force to help police the city, and there are a lot of good cops in the city, and I feel like bringing them in and bringing white people as well as the black people of the community in and showing that we're all fighting for the same cause, it really shows a bright future for what we can obtain and what we can do in the future. We'd love to continue to have events that get bigger and bigger. We'd love to have a Batavia Police versus Citizen 5-on-5 basketball game, or the possibilities are endless, and in all reality, other communities outside of us, especially local communities outside of us, seeing Batavia being the innovator or the start of really showing out our equality, that's monumental. I mean, it really could. We could be a staple city for a major movement in Western New York.
Well, that sounds great, Macy. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, not necessarily. We find it for this event on Saturdays or Sunday at noon, specifically at Williams Park. Sunday at noon, Williams Park. Peace. That's all we want is peace. As much we need people to show up. We need leaders to show up. We need city officials to show up. We need people, not even just necessarily city officials and leaders of the city, but individuals that are leaders, like people that are not willing to follow but willing to hold other people accountable. So that way, if anything does turn in an opposite direction, we can call them out and remove them in an instant, and make sure that we just to kind of make sure that we are all aware that the ultimate goal in this is to keep the peace and to create unity. That's pretty much like fine create stuff.
Great, Macy. I appreciate your time. I'm going to have to get off. I got a puppy that's starting to go crazy behind me.
All good. I understand.
So I really appreciate it. I think we covered everything. I appreciate your time, Macy.
We did. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Howard Owens, publisher of the Batavian. We've talked to Macy Paradise about the next Sundays at noon in Williams Park next Sunday, the barbecue for equality, and hope to see you all there, and continue to follow us throughout the week for more